Welcome all the students. Now we will discuss about module 13 for the program first year BSc Agriculture Honours for the subject Agricultural Engineering for second semester of course code Engineering 121 and title of course is Soil and Water Conservation Engineering. The name of the module is Factor Affecting on Runoff. I am Mr. Vinod Adkari, Assistant Professor, Don Bosco College of Agriculture, Sulcorna, KP, Goa. The outline of module is factors affecting on runoff, climatic factors, physiographic factors. At the end of this module, we all are able to learn about factors affecting on runoff, that is climatic factors and physiographic factors in details. Basically, there are two types of factors which affects the runoff rate and its volume from an area mainly influenced by these two factors, that is climatic factors and physiographic factors. We will discuss all these factors in details. First is the climatic factors, means the watershed affecting to the runoff are mainly associated to the characteristics of the precipitations. All these are the characteristics of the precipitation, that is type of precipitation, rainfall intensity, forms of precipitation, then duration of rainfall, rainfall distribution, direction of the prevailing wind and some other climatic factors also we are consider here. So, first factor is the type of precipitation, what form we are getting the water at ground surface, either it is in water form or some ice form, that is snowfall is also type of precipitation. For example, precipitation occurs in the form of rainfall, get starts immediately water, that's surface runoff, but if we are getting the snowfall, then immediately runoff will not generated. After melting of that water, then only the runoff will be generated. Second factor is the rainfall intensity. It has dominating effect on runoff yield. If rainfall, what is mean by rainfall intensity? It is the amount of rainfall we are getting per unit time. If rainfall intensity is greater than the infiltration rate of the soil, then the surface runoff takes place very shortly. While in case of low rainfall intensity, it is reverse trend. Thus, high intensity rainfall yields higher runoff and vice versa. Third factor is the duration of rainfall, how much duration that rainfall continues. Duration is directly related to the volume of runoff generation. More runoff duration, more runoff volume will be generated. The infiltration rate of soil goes down on increasing as duration proceeds. A mild intensity rainfall lasting for longer duration may yield a considerable amount of runoff. Fourth factor is the rainfall distribution. This distribution will be expressed by the coefficient or one term that is called as distribution coefficient, or that term is also called as the ratio of maximum rainfall at a point to the mean rainfall of the watershed. If greater the value of this coefficient, greater will be the runoff and vice versa. Then fifth factor of this climate, direction of the prevailing wind. It greatly affects the runoff flow. If the direction of prevailing wind is the same in the drainage system, then it has great influence on the peak flow or peak runoff and also on the duration of surface flow to reach the outlet. A storm moving in the direction of the stream slope produces higher peak in shorter time than the storm moving in opposite direction, because it gives powers to flow the water. Six, the factor is some other factors we are considering here, like temperature, wind velocity, relative humidity, annual rainfall, etc. This factor affects the water losses from the watershed to great extent, as we are losing our water, 80% of India's water lost due to the evaporation through oceans. Physiographic factor, next. The second factor is the physiographic factor. This factor consists of both the watershed as well as channel characteristics as given here. So, different characteristics we will study here, like size of watershed, shape of watershed, slope of watershed, orientation, land use, the type of moisture, the type of soil is there, topographic characteristics like slope and all this, and last is the drainage density. We will discuss all these factors in details. Size of watershed. So, size means we can measure the area, small, large watershed, around 500 hectare watershed, 1000 hectare watershed, like this. So, if all the other factors are including the depth and intensity of rainfall are same, then two watersheds of different size will produce the same amount of runoff, means it will not have different runoff. However, a large watershed takes longer time for draining the runoff, but the quantity will be the same. The next is the shape of watershed. Generally, there are two types of shape of watershed, that is fan shape and fern shape. Fan shape is just like a circular, fern shape is just like a elongated shape. Shape of watershed we can calculate, we can determine from the form factor or compactness coefficient. What is mean by this form factor? It is a ratio of average width to the axial length of watershed. So the axial length is capital L of what we can determine by the we can denote by the capital L. It is the distance between the outlet and the remotest point of watershed, and the average width denoted by capital B is obtained by dividing the area of watershed with the axial length. So B is equal to A by L. There are two types of watershed as we discussed, fan shape and fern shape. So it is most important that the fan shape watershed tends to produce higher peak rate of runoff very early than fern shape. Next is the slope of watershed. Slope of watershed has important role over runoff because slope gives also power to flow the water. It controls the time of overland flow and time of concentration of the drainage basin. In slopy watershed, the time to reach the flow at outlet is very less because that water will flow at higher velocity than flat watershed, which results into the formation of peak runoff very soon and vice versa. Fourth factor is the orientation of the watershed, means the direction north, south, east, west, like this. So this factor affects the evaporation and transpiration losses from that watershed area, as how much heat that watershed received from the sun. As we know, if we are facing north south, we will get more sunlight, means more heat will be there, so more losses of water is there. So the north south orientation of watershed affects the time of melting or collecting the snow, so that runoff will be more in this orientation of watershed. In mountains watershed, the parts located on the windward side of the mountain receive very high intense rainfall. Suppose if you take the examples of Mahabaleshwar in Maharashtra, there is more rainfall due to these conditions, resulting into more runoff yield, while the part of watershed lying towards leeward side have very reverse effect, like Pachgani, Vai, that area will have very less rainfall due to this orientation condition. Next is the land use. Area under forest cover, suppose there are vegetations, we are growing the grasses like this, there the runoff will be less because there is a restriction to flow the water over the ground surface. But if there is a barren land where there is no cover is available, reverse effect will be obtained. Next factor is the soil moisture. The magnitude of runoff yield depends on the amount of moisture present in the soil at the time of rainfall. If rain occurs over the soil which has more moisture, then infiltration rate becomes very less, which results very high rainfall. But if the soil is not saturated, then infiltration rate is more and the runoff will be less there. Next is the soil type. What type of soil is there? Either sandy soil, clay soil, laterite soil, like this. If the sandy soil is there, then infiltration rate is more and runoff is less. If the clay or some silty soil is there, then infiltration rate is less, runoff is more. The vice versa condition is there. Last factor is the topographic characteristics. Second last factor. Topographic characteristics means the slope of the land. So undulating lands gives great or more runoff than the flat lands because it gives the additional power to flow that water. Last factor is the drainage density. What is mean by drainage density? It is the ratio of total channel length in the watershed to the area of watershed. Watershed which has more or greater drainage density has peak runoff very shortly, but which has lower drainage density, it will take more time. So these are the references. Thank you.